top story today is a very important one from Stephanie Gaskell with Reuters. Army reports grim milestone in troop suicides. The wider Army is losing this battle with suicide, critics say. So what is the significance of this? Another number, another trend continuing, getting worse, the great tragedy of military suicides. Army suicides hit a new single-month record in July when 38 active duty and reserve soldiers took their own lives, according to official figures released Thursday. The toll, up from 24 in June, prompted a wave of renewed anger and frustration among Pentagon leaders and veterans advocates. And I can't believe that people don't really get this, that there's a connection here between, extended occupations of foreign countries, sending people back for multiple tours, and losing hope with life, if only for the obvious material sacrifices that come with having that being asked of you. Tom Tarantino, Legislative Director for Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, and that's IAVA. The really, and it's an interesting, I don't want to say it's an interesting organization because it's kind of one that there has been plenty of precedent for that veterans of a generation or of a conflict come together for a really generic sort of apolitical advocacy group. And it's not that it's apolitical, but they try to be nonpartisan and not take a stance on the war, and just for the sole purpose of really looking out for the immediate material welfare of veterans of these conflicts. And it's I hate to say it because I think those organizations are important. I mean, I'm a member of IAVA. I'm a member of the VFW. And I do think those are really important, but it's in the bigger context, it's kind of like begging for scraps almost when you understand that war is a racket. And I understand, yes, you fell for the racket. The government sent you to a war that wasn't justified. You should be taken care of. I certainly appreciate that. And I believe that, as long as society is saying that this is acceptable, then if the best government approximation of the market is to take care of people who are victims of this, I believe in government paying restitution. Put it that way. As long as there is a government, that is a way for it to be slightly less unjust. And if you are a victim of government who is told that you're going to go fight in a glorious war, and if you come home you're going to be taken care of, and then it doesn't take care of you, when you're dealing with legitimate health issues or mental health issues, as is obviously the factor here with veteran suicides, well, doesn't that make you feel a little bit pathetic? I mean, I hate to say this to Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans for America. It's like, it's a good organization. I'm a member, but I feel as a member of Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America a little bit pathetic to say, yeah, we should do something about veteran suicides, but we shouldn't really talk about the premises of the wars themselves and why there's that frustration and how troops are realizing that these wars are bullshit. That's what's driving this. So Tom Tarantino said, I was pretty shocked when I saw the number. This has been a continuous problem. This really stems from the military and the Department of Veterans Affairs, for that matter, basically the entire military and veteran community really coming to this issue several years late. It really wasn't until 2007, 2008, really 2009 that they started thinking about it at the level they needed to be thinking about it. And the reason is because in order to really think about it, you have to go, holy shit, the wars are bullshit. You can't. It's denial, collective denial about the significance of military and veteran suicides. And if you think active duty suicides are bad, veteran suicides are far, far, far worse. And for a long time, the number used is 18 suicides per day. I don't know if that's been fluctuating recently, but I can only imagine that as active duty suicides get higher, that you're going to see at least temporary spikes in a corresponding pattern to those in the veterans community, because a lot of the people that get out immediately are the ones that commit suicide in the veterans community. And for all these suicides that happen with people who are still on active duty, the military does, I should say, it doesn't do everything it can like it's in conscious evil organization, but is set up so that people who are destitute get kicked out. I don't fault the military for this particular aspect of it. It's just the way it is. That if you're destitute, if you're dealing with drug abuse or personal problems, and it affects your work, the military has a certain tolerance for things that they say, well, we're going to lift you up, we're going to, we're going to fix this, we're going to deal with this, and because it's a war-fighting organization, because it's, and I would expect the same of a private defense department. You're going to have this around it as long as there is violent conflict in the world, with or without government, and people who are in a position to apply deadly force should not be in that position if they're about to commit suicide. So my point isn't that this is, obviously it's a bad thing that this exists, but not that this particular dynamic is good or bad, or that anybody's at any particular fault for this, but that the consequence is that you have more suicides in the veterans community, or in the veterans numbers as well, as a consequence of this. And if anything, the military has probably gotten better at getting rid of people that are about to commit suicide, because they've had about a decade of practice of it now as it's been ramping up to this point. Despite efforts from high-profile military leaders, including Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, Army Chief of Staff General Ray Odierno, former Joint Chiefs Admiral Mike Mullen, and former Army Vice Chief General Peter Chiarelli, the wider Army is losing this battle, critics say. Tarantino said, quote, "These guys get it, but until we get that sergeant, that lieutenant, that captain, that corporal to get it, it's going to take a long time until we turn the tide on this." You know what? When the sergeant, the lieutenant, the captain, and the corporal understand that veteran suicides are a result of being sent to bullshit wars that aren't in this nation's best interest, yeah, there won't be any more veteran suicides because there won't be any more war, but they won't let that happen. Army officials said 187 active duty and reserve soldiers have committed suicide so far in 2012. Last year's total was 283. Many of the cases are suspected suicides under investigation and have not been officially classified as a suicide, officials say, meaning the eventual final total could be higher or lower. And the numbers Thursday do not include statistics for former service members. As Tarantino rightly points out here, as shocking as the Army numbers are, we have no idea what the veteran numbers are. General Lloyd Austin, and to what extent this is simply the Army and not including the other branches, I don't know, but certainly the numbers are bad within the Marines and as being obviously similarly deployed, if not in harsher conditions, as I'm sure we all as former Marines love to brag about. General Lloyd Austin, the Army's current vice chief, said the military is focused on trying to reduce the stigma associated with asking for help and address the mental health issues facing U.S. troops after more than a decade of war. Suicide is the toughest enemy I've faced in my 37 years in the Army, Austin said, and it's an enemy that's killing not just soldiers but tens of thousands of Americans every year. Now, talk about a Band-Aid solution here. And I'm not against this. Stop the bleeding, right? Triage, take care of people that are about to commit suicide, yes. And reducing the stigma for of asking for help is absolutely essential. It saves lives, absolutely. But what happens if half the Army is in therapy because they've had suicidal thoughts, because these numbers keep growing for another decade as these wars continue? You see the problem here? You still have this. Well, if we get them treatment and we put them on happy pills and send them back into combat, shit, that's fine. No, you have to address the root cause here. As he said, General Lloyd Austin again. That said, I do believe suicide is preventable. To combat it effectively will require sophisticated solutions aimed at helping individuals to build resiliency and strengthen their life coping skills. Don't take away the pressures. Don't take away the things that make them want to kill themselves. Just make them better at dealing with them. Yeah, that's a good solution. As we prepare for Suicide Prevention Month in September, we also recognize that we must continue to address the stigma associated with behavioral health. Ultimately, we want the mindset across our force and society at large to be that behavioral health is a routine part of what we do and who we are as we strive to maintain our own physical and mental wellness. And if only that were so, we wouldn't see the continuation of that pathological behavior known as government in the first place, right? The institutionalization of all our desires to control, manipulate, and dominate others by force, fraud, and coercion manifest in a single thing that we're able to call government. Isn't it great? Look at the consequences. Oh, man.